Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. Today we are going to be talking to author Peggy Janicki. She is also an educator, and we're going to be talking to her about her book, which just came out this year, called The Secret Pocket. It is a really powerful, beautifully done book, and I encourage everybody to read it because it really brings to light, a hidden history, stories that maybe we don't know about, the very painful past, but it's stories of resistance and resilience in the face of cruelty. And hold on just a minute. We'll get here. The process of creating that book, which was actually an experience shared with her by her mother. Hello. I can't
Hello.
yet.
Okay. All right.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join with us and to work through all the technical problems.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem.
So I
Sorry,
was
just checking.
showing a little bit about your book, but why don't we just dive in? I
Okay.
mean, you've done so many different things. I mean, you're an educator and you're an author. What was the journey for you to deciding to do children's books?
Well, it started first of all as a teacher. I've been telling these stories for over 20 years. So in classrooms, in university classrooms, grade 4 and up as well, classrooms, telling these stories. And uh, so the journey was really kind of sort of a continuation of that work, like telling these stories with permission, of course. And then when I shared this story with the publisher, and they were really excited. They're like, here, you need to make that into a story. And of course, you know, I have to shout out to my husband because he's been saying all along that this should be a book. And for the most part, for many years, I was like, no, I don't think this is a book. So, shout out to Mr. Rick Joe.
That's wonderful. And so what made you decide to finally that you wanted to make it into a book?
Yeah.
And also just to follow up on that, I know this is based on a real story that happened to your mother. So did that make it easier? Or did that make it harder to kind of put it together into a book?
That part, it actually made it quite a bit harder because when I was first telling this story, for example, at the University of Fraser Valley here in British Columbia, they had picked up the story and they wanted to use it to honor their indigenous graduates. And so all indigenous graduates of UFV receive this story and a grad stole, like the scarf that goes around when you graduate. And so in that process, I had asked my mom's permission. I was like, can they use this story? And her answer was always yes. Yes, people have to know. And so the sad part is my mom had passed away between telling the story publicly, using the story as a graduate initiative, and when was asked to turn it into a book, or the process of turning it into a book, I really had to be careful because I didn't want to profit from telling the story. And so I talked to my family. I talked to I consider him my brother, but my cousin. He was the chief of our community at the time of Naka-Asli Watan. And I was like, what organization can I give back to the community? And there was a few ideas, and the one that really intrigued me was the work of the Naka-Asli Elder Society. And so the elders, they do a lot of work within the community. And when I approached them, I was like, hi, I was wondering, and this is a person I don't know personally, but because they know my family, I was like, hi, you don't know me, but you know my family. And I had asked them if they would be on the author contract. And they said yes. And so it was an awkward conversation, I'm not going to lie, because the conversation was really high. Would you do this thing beyond the contract? So they said yes. They're on 90% of the author contracts, and they said yes, and they were super excited. They're like, "Oh, this is so wonderful! This is so great!" And I had to slow them down just a little bit because, first of all, I hadn't written the story yet. And second of all, the publisher hadn't agreed to write the story yet. So it was very much at the beginning of the process of writing this book. And so through each part, it was actually quite difficult because I wanted to be really careful because my mom had passed away. And also, like, this is a story of many, many communities. And so I wanted to ensure that I personally don't profit from the story.
Yeah, for those that don't know, it's a book about residential schools and things that happened to the children when they were there. And I love that you were so thoughtful about the process and even like the business side of the book and how it was presented. And like you mentioned, when your mother gave her blessing to have the story shared,
Yeah.
she said because people have to know about this. Why is it so important to have her story and others like it, these kind of hidden histories, as you call them? Why is it so important to share these with children today?
Well, there's lots of reasons. There's so many reasons. I think one of the big reasons is to reveal our resistances. I think that's a really important part to looking back at history, is to recognize our agency, to recognize this part of Canadian history, and it is very much a counter narrative. And so these stories, I feel, intersect with what we in our communities know to be true. So I think the job of many historians and teachers, social studies teachers, are to reveal or to really look for these hidden pieces of our history. And so I know some consider it decolonizing. I can't even say it. Can't even say decolonization or decolonizing our curriculum, but definitely indigenizing the curriculum.
Right. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, because you have a master's of education in indigenous knowledge and pedagogies and story, like we'll get into a little bit more of that later, but also why are books and stories such a powerful way to teach children values, history? Why is storytelling such a key component of that?
The stories, I mean, there's a whole dissertation in that question. And I am really fortunate to follow in the footsteps of Dr. Joanne Archibald, Dr. Jen Hare of UBC, and stories really are the playbook of our worldview. If I can say it just in in less than a 5-year dissertation, right? Is stories are everything. Stories, the orality, the oral history, the laws, our sovereign laws are based in this orality, and the stories that are that attach us to our history and our ancestors are so important. And I can't really, no, I don't think I can really articulate sort of that important piece to story as a worldview, but it's so many things. It's so many things. It can be a tool to teach future generations. It's a tool to for story work, to kind of work the story. It's a way to sort of express yourself, but it's also ways to tell truth.
And then you're right. I mean, in a way, I'm not really being fair to you because I'm asking you these really big questions that things that answer. And I encourage everybody to go and look at your website because you have so much information there for people who really want to dive into this. I just had so much fun reading through your website and all the information that you have. Because like you said, there really is so much to this. And especially I mentioned that you have the Masters of Education in Indigenous Knowledge and Pedagogies. And something I thought was really fascinating was this poster that you developed with some other teachers.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful, and it goes through how the story really exemplifies Indigenous ways of being and knowing, and things like connection to ancestors. And I mean, we could do a whole separate IG live just on that. But I just wanted to pick up on one of those, which is the idea that learning is about building relationships and honoring the perspectives of others in our community, which is something that is so needed today. So really it's part of like this healing process. And how can stories and books like yours be part of the healing process within Indigenous communities themselves, but also for the society at large, kind of helping honor the perspectives in the larger society?
Yeah. So, I need to shout out to the teachers, and I do attribute their contribution in that document, but I do have to shout out to BCTF, British Columbia Teachers Federation. That is their one of their main posters is Indigenous ways of knowing and being, or Aboriginal ways of knowing and being. And we simply aligned with that original poster. So often, so I was a BCTF facilitator for I think a couple of years for sure. So traveling around British Columbia, teaching teachers, and the work of BCTF is quite amazing. And so we aligned with that original poster, as is with many of the resources that come out of BCTF. For instance, sorry, I've forgotten the name of the workshop, but it would look at a book and use this format. So I just want to shout out to BCTF and the amazing work that they do, or we do. Sorry, we are the Federation, the teachers. So how this this particular poster and the work that I do, I rely quite heavily on the 5 R's of Indigenous research. So this is a research framework that will help you, do sort of a checklist with, if you're doing a project in your spaces, classrooms or schools or libraries. But it's also a framework that will help you through if you decide to do a doctorate dissertation. So it will pass that ethics review. So it's a quite powerful framework. And so the R, the relationship piece, is one of those R's. So when you say relationship, that's kind of what pops into mind for me, is aligning with this particular framework. And so I think the big piece for relationship is to understand that our resilience is not about the individual, but that our resilience is a collective resilience. And in relationship and working in community together, really working towards having social change is really what I feel that we're trying to do. And I think that would be key around the relationship piece. So I hope that was, when I looked at the question, when I was thinking of the question, I was like, oh, okay, I hope I answered the question.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm glad you mentioned the work of the teaching, I'm sorry, is it BCCF? Because you do a lot of work with teachers, and also I know you have a lot of feedback about the curricula that's used and what's happening in the schools. So I want to make sure to mention that, and that this is so thoughtful as far as how it brings all of that into the story and how the story is structured and so on. And I was wondering, you were talking about the importance of storytelling, especially in Indigenous communities, and traditionally that has been more oral. Was it hard to translate that into a written book, or to kind of think about like in the different medium? Was it hard to kind of to set it down, because it does really change it a lot?
Yeah, it that part was actually a little bit it was a little bit difficult, but I think once I got the elders' permission, or the elders saying that they would be part of the author contract, I think I was able to write it in one evening.
Wow.
Because it was, that piece was so important to this process, because I think it allowed me to write it. And so once I sat down to write it, that piece actually just kind of flowed quite
Mm.
quickly. But I think it wasn't until I got I think it was last December, because I just remember putting your first physical copy, like as an author, I'm a first time author. So I'm trying to cherish each part of this process a little bit. And so the first time I had the hard copy in my hands, and I just remember taking a picture of it and putting it under the tree, and I just couldn't believe that I put into words, and now like that's it, right? Like I know, we have an opportunity to edit a little bit, as some of the different, if we do more, I know we can do small edits along the way, but I think that's when I realized, I was like, oh, I have just put down a story onto paper, and it's gone through this whole process. And that's when I kind of went, oh, okay, um, because when I read it out loud to students, I tend to have a bit of commentary in between when I read it aloud. But I really recognize that once it's written on the book, that yes, it is very much frozen on the
Right.
page. So
Right. Although I love that like with the reading it out loud, that kind of takes it back into the oral format a bit, but it is very different. And well, now that you are an author, a children's book author, do you think that you'll be doing more? Or do you have ones that you're working on now?
uh, yes and no. Like I just recently was in a car crash, and so I'm fine. I'm just taking a little bit of time to be with physiotherapy and that kind of thing. But I do kind of have a book in mind, and I'm just going to talk to my family about what that might be. And I quite love Orca Publishing, and so I they had asked if I had a book in mind, and I said, yes, I do. I have to talk to family though. And I think I quite love the nonfiction.
Mm.
Like the nonfiction genre, I think really speaks to me, rather than fiction as a writer. And of course give myself permission to change my mind. But I do have another book in mind, and I'm just gonna check with family. Yeah.
Do you think it will be another picture book? Like, do you like writing for this age group?
Yes.
Yeah.
I adore it. It just is having read so many dissertations, read so many dissertations and so much academia. I'm just in love as a visual learner, in love with the combination of pictures with words. So I had taken my first course as a graphic facilitator, because I just love taking notes with pictures. So and I love doing that for meetings, for clients, for doing that piece of it. But the pictures with the words really speak to me. So yeah,
Well,
I don't think I can do it.
well, I should mention before you go that you are an
Yeah.
artist, and so I encourage people again to go check out the website. And I know you're a weaver in training.
Yeah.
And do you ever think that you would get into illustration, or do you want to stick more to the tech side of it?
I I would love to do both,
Mm.
be able to write and illustrate as well. Um, but I always worry about interpreting other people's pictures or what they envision. So I think I would die 1,000 deaths if I had to illustrate somebody else's work. And you know, I'm fine with writing my own ideas, or sorry, drawing my own ideas, or illustrating, you know, my life is. I quite love doing that because it's kind of, you know, there's no like middle piece of, hey, is this really the wave you want to draw?
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking the time to talk with us, and we will look forward to seeing your future books come out and make sure that we share about them and our stories. And thanks to everyone who joined us. If you joined us late, this will be up in just a few minutes on Instagram and later on YouTube. Such a pleasure to talk with you. And again, that book is The Secret Pocket. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everybody.